What I'd like to do here is quickly review some of the components of the interface. Specifically, I want to take a look at exactly how the panels work. Now, there's a couple panels that are somewhat optional. Up here towards the top, there's something called the options bar. Now, typically, I keep the options bar visible, and the main reason why is because it changes to give you options for whatever you have selected. What I mean by that is if I come over and choose something like the magic wand tool, if I click this, you'll notice that the options here in the options bar change, and this can be obviously very helpful when you're working with different tools. But if for some reason you don't like it, you can always come over to the window menu, and under the window menu, you can deselect options. When you do that, it goes away. You have a little bit more space now for your image. Throughout this course, I'm going to be using the options bar, so I'm going to come back and turn it on by coming over to the window menu, and from there, I'm going to choose options again. Now, on the left-hand side, we have the tools panel. Obviously, the tools panel is critically important inside of Photoshop. You have a couple different options in terms of how you can view it. Up here in the top right-hand corner, you'll notice that there's a two-way arrow. If you click it, you'll expand that panel to a two-column view. Depending upon your monitor resolution, you may prefer this view. This is an older view that was available in older versions of Photoshop. I, for one, prefer the single-column view, but it's completely up to you. I'm working with this document called ah_mg.jpg. Now, this image is available in the exercise files that you can download from our site. If for some reason you didn't download the exercise files, just come over to our website. Right now, I'm inside the InDesign course. That doesn't really matter, but of course, you'd have to be in the Photoshop course. All of our course pages look exactly the same, and you'll notice that there's an Exercise Files tab. If you click on that, you'll notice that there's a link for you to download the exercise files. So I'm going to go ahead and return back to Photoshop. What I want to do is point out again how the paneled structure works over here on the right-hand side. We essentially have two columns of panels, and we can control how they appear by using those same two-way arrows. Right now, we're looking at these panels in an expanded view. If I click the two-way arrows, they collapse down. You'll notice on the right-hand side, we have an icon and a label view. The column to the left of this is displaying only an icon. If you prefer the label, and you may, because you may not be comfortable with what the icon represents, I will point out, though, if you do hover over and pause for a moment, a tooltip will appear telling you what that panel is. But if you do prefer the label, just place your cursor in between the panel set and the document window. You'll get a two-way arrow. If you click and drag to the left, you'll notice you're revealing those labels. But again, if you just prefer the icon view, just click and drag it to the right. And you can do that for this panel set over here as well. So really, you have a lot of options in terms of how these panels will appear. You can even expand both columns. Depending upon your monitor resolution would ultimately dictate how much space you have for that. In my case, this is taking up too much space, so I'm going to leave the default view of this secondary column collapsed down. So these panels obviously give you all sorts of options for working with your content inside of Photoshop. If there's a particular panel that you want to access but you don't see it, you can always come over to the window menu, and under the window menu, you can choose the panel that you don't see. Now, you will see some panels that have a check mark next to it. That means that that panel is currently visible inside of Photoshop. You'll notice, however, that there's other panels that are docked with the panel group but aren't necessarily visible. For example, swatches. We can see that we don't see the swatches panel in terms of all of the options associated with it. We just see this tab. But you'll notice that the swatches option in the window menu doesn't have a check mark. So that check mark means not only is the panel currently open inside of the program, but it also currently has focus. If you were to come over and select swatches and come back to the window menu, you'll now notice that swatches has the check mark and color doesn't. If you choose color here from the menu, it just brings focus to that panel. However, there are panels that aren't currently open. For example, if I choose info, it's not currently open, nor do I see a tab for it. If I select this option, you'll notice it's automatically added to this second column of panels, and it's expanded. Now, to collapse this panel set, Really, your only option is to come over and click this icon again. However, there is a preference. If you come over to the Photoshop menu here on the Mac, the Edit menu on a Windows machine, you can choose Preferences, and from there you can choose Interface. This will open up the Preferences dialog box. You'll notice that there's an option to auto-collapse icon panels. If you select that option and then click OK, if you have a panel expanded, if you then click away from it, you'll notice it collapses. So again, whatever behavior you prefer would be the one that you would go with. I like the panel automatically collapsing. So of course you can also undock panels by dragging them from their tabs. If I select the Color tab and drag away from that panel group and let go, it becomes a free floating panel. I'm going to go ahead and redock it. As you drag the panel around, you'll see a highlight appear, which is an indicator that that's the location that you're about to dock the panel. In this case, what I want to do is dock it to the Swatches panel. Notice the highlight is all the way around that panel. If it's just above it, I'll be creating essentially a new row of panels within this docked panel set. In this case, I want to add it to the Swatches panel group so it becomes a tab. So you have a lot of options in terms of customizing the workspace inside of Photoshop. In the next movie, we're going to take a look at something called Workspaces that gives you the ability to quickly configure the interface for a particular task.